Today is a very exciting day. I have a Bud Heavy over here to do a little celebrating. We've been working super hard on 3.0 payload, and we've been closing issues with the alpha release that we put out there about a month ago. We've been moving very fast. Thank you to everybody that's been helping us test this. It's super helpful to us, and all of our tests pass. Everything is passing. Everything's green. Everything has been converted to 3.0. All of the issues, besides a couple small ones, are closed. I'm feeling good. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of breaking changes from beta to stable at this point because we've got the whole situation pretty ironed out. And I'm just super excited. I think it's coming along exactly how I wanted it to. The whole team is excited. We've been able to accomplish everything that we set out to accomplish. And I think this is truly a turning point for the idea of a headless CMS in general. The ability to install payload into any Next.js app right alongside of your front end and then deploy it all in one click, serverless to Vercel, and have it actually be first-party supported and work beautifully. That is something that we've needed for a while now, and we're about to get it. And today, I'm going to take you through 3.0. I'm going to show you what's cool about it. I'm going to talk to you about what it looks like to migrate briefly from 2 to 3. We'll give you a migration guide in the future, but that's not done. And then I'll talk to you about what the next couple weeks are going to look like at Payload as we move from beta to stable and what you can expect. Let's jump in. Okay, first thing we're going to look at is I just want to take a second and concentrate on what it looks like to combine Payload in any Next.js app ever. So we're using the app folder in Next. We're using route handlers and server components and server actions and all that good stuff. And I have seen the light. If you asked me a year ago, I would have been like, yeah, I don't need to save 100 kilobytes of JavaScript. But no, Payload needed this, and we needed it deeply to be able to separate server and client code so that you don't have to worry about like what parts of your payload config go to the browser and which parts are only for the server. We do that for you automatically now, thanks to server components. And so here's a little 3.0 test repo. This is available. I'll put a link in the description of this video. But you can see here's the app folder for Next.js. Here's your app, whatever. It's got a page, and Paul designed this one. It looks pretty manic, if you ask me, so I'm not going to show you that just yet. But this is your app right here. This is with the parentheses. That is so that you can have a layout, like a root layout for your app. And then we have Payload. And once you install Payload, we have a one-line command to install Payload in any Next.js app. But once you do that, you get the Payload endpoints and the admin panel directly inside of your app folder in this parentheses payload folder. And so just by running one command, you get everything up and running. Payload, you get all of your front end, you get whatever you need, and it's all in one app. So you push code, and then your front end and your changes to your payload schema and your CMS are all in parallel. So it just takes so much like technical complexity out of the equation by running like this. And it's going to guarantee more quality from an engineering standpoint. It's going to restore a little bit of connection back and forth from the front end to the back end, and it's a beautiful thing. But inside of this payload folder, you can see we have admin. We have one file here for the admin, and we just import the root page, and then this is responsible for routing all the payload admin UI right inside of this one page. And so once you compile this one time when you start your Next server, it stays compiled, and then it doesn't have to compile every time you jump from route to route. This was very deliberate on our side. But then we have the API folder. Same thing here. There's one route file. It's got a dynamic slug parameter for the folder name. And boom, we just export all these things. We pass it the payload config, and done. That's it. Of course, we've got GraphQL. We've got a layout. You can add custom CSS if you want still with this file here. But it's all just right there. That's it. These are just, I can delete this if I want. This is an example of like, if you wanted to create your own route handler in the app folder. Oh, I wrote this a month ago. Look at that. If you wanted to create your own route handler in the app folder and use payload and then return things with payload, this is what it looks like. It's pretty cool. Get payload, boom, pass it your config, and then you have a full local API, which is fully typed for you. So you can see if I hover over data, you get the types for your user's collection instantly. And this is end-to-end type safety, front end to back end. All of it's just done right here for you. You can reuse all those types in your front end as well, but it's this hasn't existed up until this point. It's very cool. Yeah, so the combination of these apps is huge. But let's talk about, next up is what we did to payload itself. So payload, throughout this whole process, payload has gotten significantly more modular and isolated from even Next.js. We've taken a lot of strides toward isolating different concerns in our code base. So, if you've been following us for a while, we have different database adapters now. And that's a nice pattern because payload doesn't care about your database. It just uses the adapter to touch your database. But we also have a Next package now. We've got a GraphQL package. We've got a translations package that stores all of our translations. And we've got a UI package that exports every single element, every single component, every single form field, everything from Payload's UI so that you can then reuse it in your front ends if you want. This will all be documented with Storybook. But what we came here to see is payload. So payload is very, very small now. If I look at the package JSON, what do we got? 20, 30 of them? I don't know. I can't count. But we don't have a lot. There really are very few payload dependencies, and you can install this thing anywhere. If you want to use payload inside of your SvelteKit app, you can. If you want to use payload inside of your Next app, go for it. Remix, doesn't matter. You can import payload, and as long as you have your config, you can hit your database directly. You don't go through an HTTP layer. The local API in payload goes straight to your database. Probably you guys already know that, but it's a big difference. You don't have to go hit an endpoint that then hits your database. You just go straight to the DB. And now you can install payload anywhere. And to show that off, I've got a standalone script here in this dummy repo. And this is what it looks like to use payload inside of any script. So this is just a regular TypeScript app or like whatever. It's not inside of Next.js. What we do is we import config, and we've got a helper function for you because the payload config can contain CSS, images, React components, JSX, TypeScript. We have to make sure that you can import it safely. And it's more than just using SWC register because we need to get rid of the CSS and the fonts and whatever else you might have loaded up in there. So this is a helper utility where you can import your config and then pass it to get payload. And then boom, you can run the local API. And here's that typing already again. And so I'm just logging these and then exiting, but you can use payload anywhere. It's pretty cool. The next thing I want to show is server-side module, hot module reloading. So I'm going to start this up real quick. Dev turbo, cool. I'll get back to turbo because that's pretty cool in a second. But let's go over here and let's go to our components. I've got a little component here. Let's go to the config. So if I go to the browser, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write access, and I want to see these changes, hot module reload. I'm going to say, hey, wait, nobody gets access to pages. So if I show you right now in the browser, we can see pages, and I can go there. But let me go and turn that off. I can just say read nobody, get out. If I return false here, now nobody can read pages. Pretty simple example, but go back over here, boom, they're gone. The server did not restart. Payload monitored for changes, and it automatically redid everything for you in the background seamlessly. So now Payload has full hot module reloading on the server and the browser, which is huge. Now, all of this can be deployed to Vercel. Every single part of this, it all is deployed serverless. And I've been talking for a while about getting closer to supporting Cloudflare workers and the Edge runtime and all that stuff. And I think we're closer than I thought. The entire bundle of Payload is 1.6 megabytes. My first thing I thought we needed to solve here for Edge was to get it smaller than the 2 megabyte limit. Done. We're already there. Every single route inside of this whole app is less than 2 megabytes, so that's done. The next part we have to do to get Edge function compatibility is figure out a substitute for Node Mailer so we can send email, because Node Mailer relies on Node APIs that are not supported in Cloudflare workers. So if anyone is smart with that, we're looking for input, we'll figure it out, but we're close. Right now it's all serverless. So you can deploy to Vercel, you can push this stuff, everything goes, it's just gonna work right out of the box. That's pretty cool. But probably the biggest thing that 3.0 brings, if you've built a payload app before, you know that we had our own Webpack stuff going on and we released the Vite bundler and blah, blah, blah. That was all for the admin panel. And you had to do all kinds of crazy stuff to get rid of your hooks. Like what if this had some type of like server only package or something, or it was not meant to go to the browser? You'd have to use a Webpack alias to get rid of that code from your admin JavaScript so that it wouldn't leak and like be able to be not only seen but downloaded by your users. And that was always kind of like a dark spot of payload, but that's completely fixed now. Because what we do, thanks to server components, is we take this config and we take your config and we completely remove anything server only from the config and then pass your config as props to the client components. So you don't have to write Webpack aliases anymore. We don't even have to support bundlers ourselves anymore. Next.js just does that for us. So every single thing that we've had to do to like keep up with Webpack issues, Vite issues, whatever, we don't have to do any of that anymore. It's just done for us thanks to Next.js. And the coolest part is that it works with Turbopack, everything. This is Turbopack. We've gotten it down to 8 seconds for the admin panel. This is the initial load. After it loads, it'll cache on your file system and become faster. But the admin panel is 8 seconds. That means the Monaco editor for the JSON and the code fields. That means the date picker. That means React Select. That means, what else do we have? Drag and drop. All those React packages that the admin panel uses, we've gotten it down to 8 seconds. And then the API side is 1200 milliseconds. So we've been making a lot of progress there. Hot module reloading, like I said, works on both sides, but Turbopack works. We expect that to even get faster as the Vercel team continues to push on that. But it's very, very exciting for us to be able to focus on payload rather than worrying about our Webpack config. That's just done. And it'll make you faster as an engineer because you don't have to write Webpack aliases. You don't have to worry about what gets to your front end. We do that for you. We remove it all. It's very like clear and transparent, that divide of the server and client boundary at this point. And so that's just huge. We've eliminated a lot of lines of code from our code bases just thanks to that one thing running on this beta already. But okay, so what's it look like to migrate from 2.0 to 3.0? The biggest thing, the first thing, is that we no longer use Express unless you want to. You can still use Express. You can still run Next.js on a custom server. It's well documented on the Vercel, the Next.js website. You can still use Express, but payload doesn't. Our payload route handlers are very, very simple, and they all use the web fetch request and response. And they're basically just handlers that we mount inside of, let me see if I can show you one, like find by ID. Boom, here we go. This doesn't have anything to do with Express anymore. So if you migrate from 2 to 3 and you had a bunch of Express middleware and you had a bunch of stuff like that, you can still support those types of things inside of this new pattern, but it'll just be a little bit different. So we'll give you a guide on how to map all that stuff, but it's definitely still going to work the same exact way. We'll walk you through it. The other big thing is that payload has completely moved to ESM. Everything, every single one of these packages in our folder is now transpiled down to ESM. And with that move, hold on, I gotta take a sip of beer again, I'm getting thirsty. With that move, you might have to adjust some of your imports. If you have a big application, we've gone and we've like cleaned up the way that we export things and we've made it a little bit more predictable. And you might have to change some imports. Everything that we used to export is the same as it is now. There just might be in different places, and that's it. So just keep an eye out for that. The other thing is React components. React components are now all possible to be either client components or server components. And I've got an example of that right here. So if I show you, this is the payload config, and let's just add, before dashboard. So let's just stick in a custom React component into the config. And we want to put this before the dashboard. So what that looks like in the browser, or if I show you the component real quick, this is a server component. This is run only on the server. So you can see we can get payload with hot module reloading from Next. And then we can find pages and we can output React JSX right in this server component. And that shows up on the admin panel. This could also be a client component if you want. You can opt in just by doing the client component thing, use client. But then, of course, you won't be able to use payload. This will crash it, stuff like that. So you can make those design decisions yourself. And every single custom component, doesn't matter if it's a field, an entire view, just a little before dashboard component, a little sidebar navigation button, whatever you're doing with Payload's admin UI, you can make the decision on if it's a server component or a client component. And that comes with crazy power. One example, really quick before I keep moving, is that imagine you have a select field and you want to give the select field custom options from HubSpot. Like maybe you want to select a form from HubSpot or something. And you need to go out to HubSpot to fetch your forms and then render those as options in a select input so your editors can choose one. In the olden days, you would have to have an API key to HubSpot. But wait, you can't put that API key to HubSpot in your browser bundle because then everybody can get access to it. If it's in the code for your browser, you could download the browser JavaScript and get that API key. That's not safe. So what do? You have to open up an endpoint and keep your API key on the server and then fetch against your endpoint, which then fetches to HubSpot. And then HubSpot comes back and sends it back to you from the, oh, there's a stranger at this building right now. I wonder if he thought it was a restaurant. This is not a restaurant. People do that all the time. Whatever. But anyway, so this just simplifies all of that. You can make this fetch to HubSpot right here, and then you're done. You don't have to open an endpoint. You don't have to do anything. You go return your select field with the options that were fetched on the server, and you're all set. So this comes with a lot of power. This is a huge thing. Okay, now here comes the fateful part where I get overly optimistic about timelines and I say things and then we might not hit them, but we're gonna try. We're really gonna try. All right, so what's next? I want all of this done, beta to stable, within the next 30 days. So we're gonna hit it hard. We have to update our templates. So you might know we have a blank template for payload just out of the box. We have an e-commerce template that gets you up and running with Stripe and full e-commerce cart, checkout, everything, credit cards. And then we have a website template. And those three templates need to be updated. They need to be shiny. They need to be done. So that's that. We're going to work on that next. And then we have docs. And docs will come with a full migration guide. All the breaking changes will be documented. We're going to go hard on giving you steps to migrate from every single part of Payload 2.0 to 3.0. Right now, we're expecting that will take maybe 30 minutes. It really isn't going to be too much, depending on how much you've modified payload. Could be more than that, but I really don't think it'll be a lot of work. So we're going to document that. We're going to release a full new suite of documentation in our website for 2.0 or 3.0, and then we're going to do a stable release. And when we do a stable release, we're going to do the typical marketing stuff. And I could really use your help getting the word out there. We're open source and we're doing this for everybody involved. Hey, there's that guy again out there. What's he doing? We got to get him out of here. Anyway, we could use your help getting the word out there. Help us promote it. Help us talk about it. We're looking to get more eyeballs, and the CMS space is very crowded, but I think we're trying to right the wrongs of our fathers with this 3.0 release. So I'm excited, but yeah, this is, if you want to check out the 3.0 demo repo that I showed, you can go on GitHub and the link's in the description. If you want to talk about, or you want to hear about the reasons why we did all of this, I gave a talk at the Next.js conf back in October about this. Just should we do this? Should we not? Now it's done. But if you want to hear a little bit about the background thinking from the payload team about what all this means and where we're going to go in the future, you should watch that talk. And I'll put a link in the description here as well about that. But this is just the start. We got a lot of big stuff coming out, and let's make developer happiness. That's so stupid. I don't know. Goodbye.